lost, yeah. Yeah. How does it feel when you're in a room, people are communicating, but you don't know what they're saying? Besides lost, what else?
Frustrated.
Left out, frustrated.
Curious, like
Do what?
Curious.
Curious. So how do you feel in class when you know people are talking and you're sitting there in your seat, and everybody else is talking? Same way. Yeah. Wondering if they're talking about you, maybe. Sometimes, yes.
When they laugh, when I know what the joke is, or
Right. Sometimes you're telling a joke and everybody starts laughing. It's like, well, that's funny, right. So I'm going to open up and I'm just going to ask Kody some questions. I could sit here and tell you everything, but it's a lot more effective if it comes from someone who lives it every day. So Kody has chosen to use his voice today. So that's his decision. You always want to honor the preference of the person who's deaf and hard of hearing. Some have really fantastic speech but don't want to use it, and that's their choice. Alright, so if I want your attention, Kody, don't look at me. I'm going to try to get your attention. So I can do Kody, I can do that, or if he's turned around completely and you can't see me at all, I might do hey. But what you don't want to do is, that means like emergency, hurry up, something's all, what? So it's just like, and you just kind of wait because they might finish their conversation or what they're doing. So, yeah. Sometimes if you're in a room at home, or real far away, and you have a wood floor, this, or if you're sitting at a table, you might, they feel that. So, other? The light switch, yes. So if you're in a classroom, and oftentimes it's when you have several people who are deaf and hard of hearing, but they're all chit-chatting and everything, time for class to start, lights off now. Okay, so what is your preference? I get this question all the time. People are always saying hearing impaired, sometimes, not often anymore, but sometimes I still hear deaf and dumb, deaf, hard of hearing. What's the preference not only for you, but you think for the deaf community?
most now it's deaf and then some that's hard of hearing, but only those two.
Yeah. So you're either deaf or you're hard of hearing. Ooh, isn't that offensive to call them deaf? Well, that's who I am. I'm deaf. With deaf people, people say, oh, they have a disability, but it's more like a cultural minority for a lot of deaf people. And one thing I have in the handout is talking about the big D deaf and the little d deaf. So you have a lot of people we call big D, that means capital letter D, meaning that they identify with deaf culture, deaf community, because you have, sports teams that are all deaf. You have Deaf Olympics, you have, clubs, everything that a culture has. Language, ASL is its own language, it recognizes as such a language. And so, for many deaf people, and most of what we call big D deaf, it's like, don't call me disabled, don't call me hearing impaired. I'm not impaired, but big speak. So, that's the reasoning behind that. And of course, when I first went to work in Danville, I went to sit and eat, and they said, "Oh, do you work at the D&D school?" I said, "The D&D school? What's the D&D school?" I had no idea what they were talking about. "Oh, the deaf and dumb school." That just makes you want to cringe. So, and you'll do that occasionally. Once in a blue moon, people will say it. I'm like, so if someone says to you, and you've decided to use your speech today, but if someone says to you, "Oh, Kody, you have such good speech," how do you react to that?
It's uncomfortable.
Why?
But I feel like I'm singled out in the deaf community. Like they're taking me out of the deaf community and putting me in this group.
Oh, I think
Then I feel uncomfortable when they compare me with the other deaf people.
What about they compare your speech with hearing people's speech? Because they say, oh, you have good speech. I mean, is that something you say to a hearing person? You have good speech. No, so why would you say that to a deaf person? I mean, it's like you have good speech for a deaf person, you know. So it's not like you're complimenting their accomplishment, which is what most people think they're doing. So what are some other things, it's every deaf person's favorite question about speech, right? So what are some other things about speech that unique feelings about speech in general?
I'm still a little self-conscious when I speak because I can't pronounce the word like a hearing person. But in most places I don't use my voice. Because many people I've met assume that I can hear them too.
Exactly. And sometimes people will turn because the voice sounds a little different. With Kody, not as much, or with many deaf people. They are forced to use their voice at home, so when they're with their parents or with their family, they have to use their voice because they don't know sign language. And then if they're in a restaurant or something like that, other people may turn and look because it's different, you know. And even though they don't mean it offensively, the deaf person is the one that you're looking at, you know. So you said, what triggered a thought? What was that? I had this question. What did you just say about? Maybe it'll come back. You said sometimes it made you feel awkward or uncomfortable. Oh, I know what it was. So, like you said, sometimes when you speak to a hearing person, say for example, you go to the doctor's office and you use your voice and you talk to the doctor, what happens? Automatically, what does he assume, do you think?
That I can hear him.
That you can hear him.
Then I let the interpret.
Right. So if you were to go in and sit down with Paula in her office and you start talking and then she starts talking, well, she understands you fine, so she assumes you understand her fine. And do what?
But she made sure I understand.
Right. I'm just using her as an example. But I mean, and sometimes one-on-one that's just fine, but it depends upon the situation. So like if you're in a doctor's office, it's a little bit more complicated using vocabulary you don't understand, you know, taking a medical history is very complicated. There's a lot of questions. What does that mean? Or maybe that doctor has an accent. Maybe, you know, they have a mustache. It's not easy to lip read them, you know. But people assume, like, I'm sure like with Kody, I don't know, he uses hearing aids. So maybe if I yelled, I don't know, if I'm behind him and I said, Kody, he might turn. Now, and he might be used to hearing what the cadence of his name sounds like. So he might say, yeah. And people say, oh, see, you can hear. You know, when really what you hear is what? What do you hear? You hear sound, you hear a voice.
I hear this sound and the voice. But it depends on the person. If I'm used to that voice, then I don't hear it.
Right, but do you understand the words?
My name, yes. Most of the time when people say it, but most of it is not.
Right, so you might hear that a person is talking, but not understand the words that they're saying. So, and there's a lot, I mean, when you say somebody's deaf, it doesn't mean that they hear nothing. You know, it's just like people who have a vision impairment. Well, sometimes they see shadows or they might see someone coming, but it's not clear. It's the same thing with deaf people. They have varying degrees of hearing loss, and some hear, you know, thunder, and that's all. And some can hear really high-pitched sounds. They have what they call these islands of hearing. If you talk to an audiologist, they'll tell you that, you know, they'll like, oh, yeah, see, he hears. He heard that. Well, it just depends on your hearing loss. It depends on how much for lip reading. I'm sure that's your next favorite question. Are you a good lip reader? Would anyone ever teach you how to lip read?
A little bit at KFC.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
And you give you the cars,
Yes.
and they just move their lip and you point out the cars.
Oh, very good. so there are some curriculums on teaching lip reading. Not many deaf people get that opportunity, but it's an art. It's not just like, oh, and I hear it all the time, especially when deaf people are in the hospital. Oh, we're doing fine. He lip reads me. Or they say, can you read lips?
They do it in nil. Slowly.
No, here's how they say it. Can you read my lips? And that just makes it worse. So if you ever are sitting down with someone one-on-one and you're trying to have a conversation, just speak normally. You know, speak at a normal rate. You know, don't slow down. Don't over-exaggerate your lip readings. That just makes it harder. But if you got real thin lips, you know, or you have a strong accent, or you mumble, or, I mean, there's so many things that affect lip reading ability for a deaf person. You already said they assume that you don't need an interpreter if you can speak, so it's like, well, yeah, you understand me, but I don't understand you. So what's fair about that, right? Just write notes. If we can't find an interpreter, what's wrong with that?
It takes a long time to put down everything.
Do you think you get everything? No. People shorten it. They tell you, oh, here's a good one. We're all sitting around talking, and you like, what was that about? What was that joke about? Or what was that called? Look serious. What was that about? And it's like, oh, I'll tell you later, right?
I hear that all the time.
All the time. Or,
Not important.
it's not important. Yeah, that's exactly right. Oh, it's such a common refrain that you hear all the time. Or they'll tell you 3 words, and you know that conversation went on for a long time. And it's like, oh, they give you the topic, but you don't get any of the details. That's very common. Very common. And it happens a lot at home.
Especially family reunions. I don't go anymore because of that.
Yeah. I have an interpreting agency, and one thing that we do is we say, if you're going to have a family reunion and you want an interpreter, just let us know. Of course, we don't charge deaf people when they are the ones who have to pay for it, because why should a deaf person have to pay for an interpreter? So weddings, family reunions, funerals, those are the 3 we try to do. Because, and there are some strategies you can use when you're going to a family reunion. I encourage people to do name tags, you know, things like that. I think that it's really good if you have an interpreter. So we're in this room, and all of a sudden, everybody stands up, they look panicked, and they start leaving the room. What just happened? Maybe there was some kind of emergency. Maybe it was a bomb threat. Maybe it was a fire alarm. Maybe you didn't hear the fire alarm. Maybe it doesn't have the flashing lights. Maybe there's an active shooter in the building. They announce it on the intercom. It's like, and I hear it all the time. It's like you just watch and you just follow, right? You don't know why, right? I don't know how that feels because I never had to experience that.
I wanted to.
I think that
Yeah.
yes.
Probably will. My husband, we were at the Marriott, and it was in the afternoon. I was in a workshop. He had sat in the room taking a nap. This is maybe 15, 20 years ago, maybe more. Longer. But all of a sudden, the fire alarms went off. And they were making us go down, you know, the escalators are not working, you're having to walk and all that. We're going outside, and there's the fire trucks and all that, and all the fire trucks, everything's there. And I'm thinking to myself, my husband's still in the room. They don't have the flashing lights. You know, and he's not deaf. He's hard of hearing. But when he's asleep, forget it. So I'm like, and they won't let me in. And I'm like, go to the room, knock on the door, get him out. And they didn't. And it was fine, you know, but, you know, so I happened. And they didn't have the flashing lights in the room. You know, they're like, oh, we'll come, we'll put one up in the living room. Well, whatever, you're in the bedroom. You know, so.
Like deaf school, they have different lighting for different things. Like at KSE, they have red light for the fire alarm and the blue blue one, if, you know, in high school, the class that changes, they do the bell, the blue light would flash, so the student knows the time to change.
Cool. So that's interesting you bring that up. So you were attending Gallaudet University before college, and what is it like? And that's an all-deaf school. They have deaf instructors, hearing instructors who are fluent in sign language, deaf people, obviously. So what is that like for you compared to attending like a school like this that has all hearing people?
There, I feel more like I fit in. Here, it's a little bit harder. There, I immediately make friends and people would be in the same class and stuff. Here, it's hard.
And you're like everybody else, right? What about the instruction?
They use ASL, more facial expression, body movement. In the classroom, the desk would be all around instead of like this.
Right. So you have that sideline, you can see each other.
And it's easier to get into the class discussion.
Yeah.
You don't understand what they're saying right there. When here, it's a little bit delayed.
Yeah. Even going through the interpreter, it's a slight delay, you know? And so it's like if the teacher asks a question, the deaf person doesn't have time to, you know, get in there. You know, it's always like 2 seconds late, you know. So it's even harder for deafblind. Deafblind interpreting is a whole other story. That's another 30-minute lecture. Well, 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour.
And that's a different language too.
Yeah, well.
A little bit. They're doing the
Oh yeah, the haptics. That's really cool. Different thing. Plus, you have the direct instruction with the teacher. Yeah. So, I understand you have a hearing aid, right? So, like, if you go over there and you turn around and I say, "Can you hear me now?" and you say yes, and then I say, "Okay, turn around. Can you hear me now?" How does that make you feel when people play those games?
like I'm a lab rat or something.
Lab rat, yeah.
And that's happened before.
Yeah.
I've had family members do that.
What other things do people do?
And they got sign language.
Oh.
And they don't realize how offensive it is. But I had like one person in high school, here in high school, came up to me and said, "This mean anything?" And I said, "No." He kept doing it over and over. So I got fed up with him and I told him the last one did. And he said, "What does it mean?" And I said, "It means you're an idiot." Just stop.
I love that. I love that. Hey, I'm not keeping up with time, so you'll have to let me know when I can come. 7 o'clock here. We have 10 more minutes. Oh, it's there. Okay, cool. So I don't know what you can hear without your hearing aid.
Loud noise, I can hear it, but most of the time I don't know exactly what it is.
Do you wear it all the time?
When I'm around other people.
Okay, so it's not really something you wear 100% of the time. What about when you were growing up?
Well, my parents, I started wearing hearing aids when I was about 4. But they made me wear it more growing up. But now as an adult, I only wear it when I need to.
So, what about learning ASL? When did you learn ASL?
I only remember a little bit until about 10 or 11 when my parents found out about the deaf school in Danville. And we moved there, and that's when I really started to learn.
And that's
I was about 10 or 11 years old.
And that's when we met.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought of a question I wanted to ask you. You say something interesting, my mind just goes blank. Oh, okay. So you started learning sign language around age 10, 11. I think it surprises some people. They think, you mean you didn't start learning sign language when you were little? So how did you communicate with people? Yeah. Did your world change when you went to KSD and started learning signs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
as my mother explained, but I don't really remember much, but she said when she saw me with, they didn't want to move, it was like 3 hours from here. And so we went there, I think we met you that day too, and we went into the cafeteria. And she said that when she saw how I lit up with the other kids who used some sign language, that when she told my dad, she said, we're moving.
It was like that, just like that. I see it happen with kids all the time, but never been around other deaf kids, and they come to the school and they go into the cafeteria and it's like, whoop! And all of a sudden they start trying to communicate, and the other deaf students there are so wonderful about knowing and including and gesturing, and it's really a wonderful experience. So a few things I wanted to make sure that we cover. Where is it? Here. I know we only have like a few minutes left, and I want time for you to ask a few questions if you have them. But if you have a deaf person in your classroom, or if you're, using an interpreter, make sure you don't say, tell him, tell her, I'm here, right?
That's another thing. This happened recently. When you talk to a deaf person, you look at the deaf person. The interpreter will interpret what you're saying. But I've had people who were talking to me, but looking at my interpreter. And that's confusing for me, because I don't know if they're talking to me or the interpreter.
So you're talking to her, right? You're talking to her, and you want to talk to her. I'm the interpreter, and you're looking at me. Well, how do you feel? She's looking at me, and not you. So you need to look at the person that you want to talk with. And also, oftentimes I get this as an interpreter. It's like, don't interpret this. What? If you say it, it's here. So yeah, I get that all the time, especially family members. They are the worst. They'll say, don't interpret this. Sometimes a doctor will say that. Sometimes you never know who. Don't interpret this. Yeah, don't say that ever.
That would be considered autism.
Yes, that would be considered autism, and that will be in your handout.
That's right.
Oh, thank you. So you know about all the isms, right? So this comes from the root word audiology, and so it means discrimination against people who are deaf and hard of hearing. And that happens in so many ways that people have no clue that they're doing it. And that's one reason why we're doing this. So you don't do things certain ways. What labels do you use and why? What do deaf people prefer to be called? There's always that person first language. You always say a person who is deaf or hard of hearing. When you're writing like in a publication, something they teach you. Person first language. You don't say a deaf person. You don't say a blind person. You don't say, you say a person who has cerebral palsy. Understand that. A person who has epilepsy, not epileptic person. I understand that, and that's true. But if you're talking about a group that identifies as a cultural minority, you don't say a person who is deaf. You say a deaf person. That's who I am. That's my identity. That's my culture. I have to say a person who is deaf. I'm not sure it's offensive, but it's sure better than a person who is hearing impaired. Yeah. So autism is discrimination against a deaf or hard of hearing person. There's a handout on that. There's a second handout that's really awesome, and it's called, Is This How a Deaf Person Feels? And it kind of turns the tables like when we started signing in the beginning, and you feel included. That's exactly what it's about, so I encourage you to read that. And then the third handout is on the two views of deafness. And so one is pathological, and the other one is cultural. So you'll see that in there. It's like, deafness is a difference, it's not a disability. You know, trying to fix the ability to hear, like through, you know, intense speech training, or through cochlear implants, or through hearing aids and all that, as opposed to just allowing me to be who I am if I choose to do that or don't choose to do that. So I want you to read that too. We can't cover everything today, gosh, there's so many, we could talk for hours. But those are things, if you're interested in more information, that are right there. One story I'd like to leave you with too is when they had the Deaf President Now movement. I was an interpreter at that time for Dr. Forster, and he was one of the top 3 candidates for the job at that time. And of course, I King got the job. Well, he was interviewed on 60 Minutes. He became the first deaf president of Gallaudet University. They had never had a deaf president. Now, if you can imagine a black university that never had a black president, you can just imagine. You know, it's like, don't you believe in your own people, right? So they had 3 candidates, and of course, they picked a hearing. Well, after 8 days of protest, she stepped down, and I King Jordan got the job. Well, he goes on 60 Minutes, and the woman's interviewing him, and says to him, so if somebody could, you know, if you could become hearing instead of deaf, would you do that? And he says, well, if you're black and I can give you a pill and you can become white because you have privilege, would you do that? This is who I am. This is who I want to be. Yeah, it's difficult. Yeah, it's frustrating. Yeah, there's obstacles. But it's who I am. It's who I want to be. I don't want the magic pill. So people are like, really? Another thing I think is interesting, one time I was at the National Association of the Deaf Conference, and my really good friend, they were having a baby, you know, and of course I got 3,000 deaf people, you know, here at this conference. And we're on the elevator, and a couple of hearing people get on the elevator with us. We weren't paying attention to them. But he's talking about, oh, she just had the baby. I'm like, oh, yeah. I said, is it deaf? Right? And so he's like, oh, we don't think so. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know. And so these hearing people are like, what? You wanted a deaf baby? And I'm thinking, you know, they saw that they were deaf. So it's like having that child that's just like you. Yeah, I mean, they're happy they have a hearing kid because they're not going to have to experience, you know, the same frustrations and all that. But at the same time, they wouldn't have been disappointed either. You know, it'd been kind of cool. There's a lot of deaf families that have like generations of deaf people. You've seen in the news, what's his name? The model. No. Yeah. What's his last name? DeMarco. No, he's talking about Dancing with the Stars, and he won and all that. You know, and he's like generations of deaf family. So, you know, and they love that. That's fantastic. One quote that I love, it's from Victor Hugo, and it's an old quote, and he says, "What matters deafness of the ear if the mind hears?" And I love that, because it's like, you know, it's not about being deaf or not being able to hear. It's about the barrier of communication and the barrier of language. Other than that, there's no disability, right? That people can do anything but hear. Yeah, that was another famous I King Jordan quote that he used. Do you all have questions for me or Kody?
No, I didn't know there was a singular form for deaf people, autism.
Yes, it's fairly new term.
It's a new
Last
word.
10 years, sort of in the last 10 years, yeah.
Well, people use the word for autism, which is my disability, or then autism, it seems like.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I wonder why.
It's just a description.
Maybe it sounds
Or
too much
autism.
like autism.
Oh, you think it sounds too much like
Because
autism?
autism.
Yeah. One thing that is funny, I think it was 2 weeks ago, there was Gender Recognition Day or something like that, and you know, it's like, do I use him, her, his, hers, he, them, theirs, we, So they were posting all these things on Facebook, and they posted the ASL version of pronouns, and it's like he, him, her, you know, it's like one sign, it's like, whoo, we don't have to worry about that, right? So I thought that was pretty cool to see that. Yeah, it was really neat. It's kind of like, here it is in ASL, him, her, his, theirs, you know, it was pretty cool.
Oh, and this might be a derogatory question, but do they know the middle finger?
They know the what?
I may be a little bit of a weird and bad question, and I'm just stupid to ask this. Do they know the really middle finger? Blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
I mean, I'm not saying asking this to be rude. I'm just, you know, I'm
like the
stupid.
hearing equivalent, you
I
know.
don't know, I'm stupid.
Yes.
I bet Kody would think it's offensive that I asked him that. Or at least that's what his name is.
What about it?
I don't know, just asking.
Oh, I think everybody knows those signs.
Alright.
Any questions over here? Yes.
So if I see you in the hall, how do I say hi?
That's another thing that we had time we were doing. Those are the signs you already know. I, bye. There's many that you know that you gesture that you don't realize.
So
You hear people say, what? Yeah, like, what?
Gesture attitude.
That's a sign too. That's a sign that deaf people use.
Okay, so if you're in like a group of deaf people and everybody was deaf, how would they know which one, like which person you were talking to?
So you're in a deaf group.
How do they know who you're talking to? How do you know who you're talking to?
You just start talking, usually eye contact very important. Like with hearing people, sometimes we're on our phone and we're, you know, and somebody's talking to us, you can't do that when you're deaf, it's this. That's why a deaf person will wait for you to put down your phone and look, because that's like I couldn't stand that thing in the way, because it's like, it feels like a barrier. Even though I know she can peek around the corner and see me, it's like it doesn't feel comfortable to me, you know? I'm around deaf people and hearing people, so it doesn't feel comfortable.
Definitely don't put centerpiece.
Right. So if you're at a banquet or something and you got deaf people there, those nice centerpieces, they're going on the floor, just like that.
If you're speaking to a deaf person that reads lips, do you want to avoid like contractions, you know, like I'm, we're, you know, and to actually just speak the entire word?
Some contractions are okay. I think it's more slurring your words. You know how, especially in the South,
Right.
you know, we say, what do you know? We don't say, what do you know? We say, what do you know? And we put it all together. Now, if you grow up in the South, you might lip read that okay. But if you go somewhere else in the country and your accent is different, then you just have to speak clearly. I think it's important. Right? It's clear.
I know with cell phones becoming like more and more of a big thing, like has like texting kind of like changed how the deaf community like communicates?
That's what I was asking.
Texting and video calling.
Yeah, and how has the texting changed how deaf people communicate? Same thing. See, he's young. He doesn't remember back in the day. I remember. And I remember when we had the first TTYs. I mean, you talked to each other, you had TTYs. And he probably used those when he was young. And now they have video phones. So with the passage of the American with Disabilities Act, they have 4 titles in that act. The 4th one is the Telecommunications Act. So that's set up for deaf people to be able to use the phone, so it's free. They call Sears. Is that still on sale? Well, it goes through an interpreter, a place where they hire interpreters to do that all day. And so they see the interpreter answers the phone, the deaf person signs it, the interpreter says to Sears, hey, you still have that on sale. Whatever their answer is, the interpreter signs it back, and the deaf person has access that way. Some deaf people who don't have internet access still use the TTY. But before we had cell phones, the pagers first were being used, you know, and I tried to get them at KSD for deaf staff and everything, and it was a lot of controversy about, that's not fair, you can use a cell phone, you're hearing, and I'm deaf, and we can't use the phone, it's not fair, you know, put that in your pocket. And now you have deaf people, what? So it's like, you see, you're hooked on those things. Yeah.
I just want to know, is there anything that we can do to make Kody feel more comfortable here on campus?
Everything's fine now.
Everything's pretty good now. I don't really think there's any more that you can do. You know, it's a hearing environment, you know, I mean, unless you can make it a deaf environment, you know. I think that things like this, that make people aware, you know, so that you're not like saying, you know, you're not thinking in a certain way, because that affects your behavior. You're not thinking, oh, I understand you, you understand me, or you can live with me, or we'll just write notes, or I'll tell you later. I think those are very aggressive, you know, or saying, oh, you're hearing impaired. I have a friend who's hearing impaired, you know, and of course, Kody and most of people are not going to correct you, you know, they're just going to, and they're used to it, right? They're used to it. And one other thing is like employment. So like, it's like, oh, how am I going to hire a deaf person? How am I going to communicate with them? You know, and it's a real barrier to the hiring process. But oftentimes I finally get someone in a job and it's like, they're like, do you have like 10 more people like him? Because he's not easily distracted and he communicates with me just fine. Because deaf people have to communicate with hearing people all the time, right? I mean, that's just how there is in existence. So they know their techniques, their strategies. You don't have that. They have that experience. So it's kind of like, you know, it's like, you're not going to have an interpreter with them all the time at work. It's going to be...
So what I mean about the interpreter is that the interpreter is not for the deaf person, it's for the hearing person.
Right, right.
The deaf person can't really learn your language, but most hearing people don't know sign language, so the interpreter for them.
Right, right. Exactly. Any other questions that you might have?
It was nice to meet you, Kody, even though I never knew your name before this event. Because the first time we met, you guys said, I'm on Spencer Everly. What's your name? I didn't know you were deaf.
Oh, that's another thing I want to say. Like, if we just came in and you knew there was going to be an interview today, and one was going to be hearing and one was going to be deaf, if he wasn't wearing a hearing aid, how would you know which one of us is deaf?
Where's this hearing aid at?
Right here. Where's your hearing? He didn't see your hearing aid, yeah.
Oh.
So it's an invisible disability.
I have people come up to me and tell me that they try to call for me and I was far away, but they didn't know I was deaf. I had people say that they thought I was being an asshole.
Well, that's like in Bowling Green, you know, the deaf guy who got shot by the police officer because he was trying, you know, he didn't hear the police officer. And I mean, you know, that's a tough one. I mean, because police officers feel like their lives are in danger all the time, but at the same time, you know, that's why we provide training and everything as much as we can when we can get in to officers to say. And we have visor cards now, like if they get pulled over, but if they're not getting pulled over, you know, there's no way to communicate. Hey, I'm deaf. I mean, I'm not wearing a shirt that says I'm deaf, right? So you have the visor cards now. You know, it's like, just doing this. You know, and here in Kentucky, it's really great. It has like, what do you do if I am a deaf person who doesn't use sign language? I use oral communication, you know, what to do, who to call, blah, blah, blah. It's right there for the officer to see. So, you have one. You're not driving much.
I don't have a car, but
I don't have a
I
car
can
yet.
drive.
Oh, but I can drive. Yeah, that's always a common question. I saw on Facebook this woman, she's like, filing her nails, and she's like, yeah, she said, I did something. I ran over that person who asked me if I could drive. She's deaf, you know, so, yeah.
One question, that one, and can you read Braille?
Yeah. I'm going to bring you a Braille menu. Yeah, Yeah.
I actually told the person, I said, I'm deaf now.
Yeah. Do you get married? Do you have children? Are your children deaf?
I don't know.
Yeah.
People ask, like, how can deaf people have children if they can't hear them cry?
Oh, yeah.
But they have technology.
I know so many deaf people who have sadly had their kids taken from them because the grandparents or whoever's in their life said, oh, who's going to teach them how to speak and you can't hear them if they cry, all kind of stuff, but they can't. There's so many things they can't do now. But even before they had technology, deaf people knew how. You know, they slept with their baby nearby. I mean, there were many things that they, and they're going to hear on TV, radio, school, they're going to learn speech, all that kind of stuff. It's not a good argument, but there are many judges who don't understand and award them custody. So I know many really wonderful deaf people who are really wonderful parents who don't have their kids. It still happens today. It's not one of those things that happened a long time ago. It still happens. Not as much maybe, but it still happens.
I think judges should learn more about other cultures.
Yeah.
I had
They're the
one
worst.
when I got the ticket about my mother. She knows some sign now, but I understand her speech better than most people. And she went with me to the judge, and then I had this beard and white beard. She said something I didn't understand, and I looked at my mother, and she was saying what he was saying. He stopped her, and he said, he can talk, he's got more white in fear, he can do all the communication with me. He told my mom just to stop. So I had to wait until after the court was done, then find out what all he said because I didn't understand.
Yeah, because you can't defend the judge. Yeah, yeah. But it's so common. You know, people think, oh, that won't happen. Oh, it happens a lot. Yeah. Well, I know we're past time. If there are any other burning questions, I guess you can come up, although she has a class. You have a class today? Where are they? Are they waiting out in the hall? Okay, so thank you.